Dear colleagues, good afternoon. This is our final session. And also it will be fully online. Amani, you're here as we see. Let's start with Amani Shaban with presentation static types, dynamic use, reconsidering amphora typology through functional reuse in Hellenistic and Roman Egypt. Please, Aman.
Hello.
Hello.
Good morning. Good morning from Egypt. Yeah. Today I'll present a paper entitled Static Types, Dynamic Use, Reconsidering Amphora Typology through Functional Reuse in Hellenistic and Roman Egypt. This paper explores the contrast between the static nature of amphora typology and the dynamic realities of their use in everyday life in Egypt. Rather than seeing amphora only as transport containers, I focus on how they were used in different contexts: domestic, industrial, architectural, and funerary. I focus on how they were used in different contexts, as I said. First, I will briefly explain how amphora are traditionally classified. Traditionally, amphora are studied as transport and storage containers. They are classified based on shape, fabric, and production centers. Archaeologists use features such as rims, bases, and body fragments to define types, which helps reconstruct production and trade networks. However, this system mainly focuses on form. So the main question is, what happens to amphora after they arrive in Egypt? Do they simply disappear, or they continue to live in different forms? To answer this, we need to rethink complete objects versus fragments. In theory, amphora are often studied as complete objects, but in reality, especially in Egypt, they are rarely found intact. What we usually find are fragments, rims, handles, and body shards. They are not complete vessels, but they are still highly informative. They reflect long object biographies, use, reuse, and discard. So what we deal with this fragmented archaeological reality, this creates a clear tension. Typology is static and based on fixed forms, while archaeology shows a dynamic reality of reuse and transformation. So the question becomes, can typology alone explain amphora function in Egypt? This leads to the aim of study. Amphora are usually studied as transport containers. However, both textual and archaeological evidence show that their life didn't end after use. For example, Herodotus, who visited Egypt in 5th century BC, describes how amphora imported from Greece and Phoenicia were used in Egypt, filled with water and redistributed to areas lacking water. This also reflects wider networks, including Syria and Palestine. So reuse is not a new idea. We also see reuse of local products, especially wine, from Maritime region. Modern archaeology confirms this pattern. We find reuse in domestic, industrial, architectural, and funerary contexts, especially in Roman Egypt and the Maritime region. So reuse wasn't rare, it was a widespread practice. This brings us to the methodological problem. The aim of this study is to rethink amphora typology through evidence of reuse. Instead of focusing only on classification, I focus on what happens after the first use. I address three main questions. First, how were amphora reused? Second, does reuse affect typology? Third, what does this reveal about daily life and the economy? To answer these questions, I combine typology with archaeological context, use where, and the depositional evidence. This allows us to move from a static system to a dynamic understanding Amphora life cycle. I distinguish between primary and secondary use. The primary functions, as we know, is as transport and storage, but once embedded, amphora often enter a second life. We can see clear traces of intentional modifications. For example, in Egypt, some late Roman amphora 7 from Maria, west of Alexandria, show opening at the base. In contrast, in Athenian examples, openings are made at the shoulder, below the neck, to help pouring water. So the position is different, but the idea is the same. Reuse and adaptation. Different modifications, but the same logic. In domestic contexts, amphora were widely reused. Empty amphora were frequently used for storing goods within households, like grains and food products. We found Baberi mentioning reuse of amphora for old food products like Egyptian old cheese. In some cases, broken amphora were reused as simple cooking stoves in domestic context. This shows a very practical form of reuse in everyday life. Also reused for transporting water, especially in remote areas such as quarries. For example, the late Roman amphora 5-6 were reused as at stopover for the pilgrims in Maria on the way to the Abu Mina. So in daily life, amphora become flexible objects adapted to many needs. They were no longer just transported containers. Amphora were also reused in architectural and industrial contexts, often as raw material in construction. We find them in walls and in construction fills. In some cases, they were also reused as containers for mortar. This vessel examples illustrates the same idea, showing how ceramic vessels could be integrated into constructions. We also find a large number of amphora fragments linked to a production activity. This reflects continuous cycles of use, reuse, and discard. Even as fragments, they remained part of the built environment. Amphora were used in funerary contexts. In some cases, they were used as containers for infant burials. This evidence comes especially from the Mardik region in Mutawah. Here, the amphora is no longer just a container, it becomes part of a burial with a new function and a new meaning. The evidence from Mardik region clearly shows that reuse was very common. So reuse isn't occasional, it's widespread. Typology, as we know, is static and based on form, but actual use is dynamic and highly contextual. If we rely on typology, we lose the full life history of amphora. This means that typology alone can't fully explain amphora function. In other words, typology alone is not enough. To better understand the amphora, we need to combine typology with archaeological context, use where, and depositional evidence. This approach shows that amphora had multiple lives and changing functions. Their functions could change depending on context, from transport to storage to industrial use and even to funerary practices. Most importantly, context becomes essential for interpretation. So amphora shouldn't be seen only as transport containers, but as dynamic objects shaped by reuse and everyday practices. In conclusions, Amphora in Hellenistic and Roman Egypt had many lives beyond their original functional. Amphora were not just containers, they were part of a lived experience. That's it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Amani. Very interesting view on Amphora, especially because the long-term grouping system that exists regarding types of amphora. Any question or comment? Maybe in the chat? No. No. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
We have now colleagues from Turkey, Leyla Ozluoglu, İçal Özelçe, and Ergün Lafli. Ergün Lafli will present stand decoration of a late Roman Red Slip group from Western Asia Minor. Please.
Yes. Hello to everybody. Otur hocam. Şimdi isterseniz en olmadık zamanda ne olur daha fazla ses çıkarmayın, olur mu? Lütfen bir soru sormayın daha fazla. Hello to everybody. Hocam lütfen oturup ses çıkarmayın rica ediyorum. Yes, we are connected from Turkey and thank you very much for this opportunity. We are especially thankful to our friend, our colleague, who was in Izmir a couple of times ago to visit Izmir, Maria. I hope that she's also listening to us right now with Leyla together, because Leyla is now in Belgrade, as far as I do know. I hope so. I hope she's there and listening to us. Yeah, and let me just show you our slide first. If it's can you view our slides right now? No.
Yes, we can see your slide, but share the full screen.
Yeah, I'll share the screen right now, and I'll open up a little bit the thing. Yeah. As you perfectly announced, the title of our conference is a group of late Roman red slip vessels from Western Asia Minor. We are now heading to from Egypt, from this lovely area of Egypt, to Western Anatolia.
Ergun, excuse me. Is your presentation now full screen on your computer?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, because we still don't see it. If you can stop sharing your screen and then share it again on the green button.
I'll do it, don't worry.
Just now press, when the first window opens, just press the option share screen or something like that.
I'll do it.
Do not press PowerPoint.
Gotcha what you're saying. Let me just close once again, because I always have troubles with this. Also in my courses, I'm always facing it's the same problem, because I'm technically a little bit defected, so.
No, it's not you, it's a common Zoom problem.
All right, yeah. Yeah, I know it, because next week we also have a sort of a workshop with Zoom, and I will see how it's going to be working out with Zoom. Yeah, let me just check it once again. I'll go in Turkish. It's paylaş, and it's over here. There we go. And I'll do now full screen again. Can you now see it? The full screen?
Unfortunately not.
Oh, really? How come? How come I can do it now?
Oh, okay, but the slides are moving actually.
Okay.
It's okay.
Yes, it's okay. Yes.
Maybe I'll do a little bit bigger. Now bigger? No, not bigger. Same.
No, it's not bigger.
Sorry. So then you should just use your imaginations instead of like you should imagine it, okay? So because it's a little bit problematic. Anyways, once you visit me in Izmir, then I'll take you to those places, because now I have a map of places where we have this main pottery production centers in Western Asia Minor. When I was in Serbia, I've been to Serbia 3 or 4 times, and each time I realized that you also have some pottery imported from Asia Minor to some places in, especially Minimasyum, and I've also seen a couple of pieces in Belgrade. So I think those pieces came mostly from western part of Asia Minor, especially from the coastal part of Western Asia Minor, where we are now, actually in Izmir. So these are the main production centers from the north to the south. The first is Pergamum, the famous Bergama today. And then we have a very important center, Pitane, which is Chandarlı today. Then we have Fokaya, Old Fokaya. Then we have a modern Ottoman and modern production center, which is Menemen, a Greek name, a Greek personal name in the 19th century, converted into Turkish name Menemen, toponymic name. Then we have Smyrna, Old Smyrna and Smyrna in Hellenistic and Roman times, that we know very well that it produced lots of pottery, lots of different classes of pottery. Then we have, of course, the large city of Ephesus, the capital of Roman Asia Minor, where we suspect that they produced ESB. Then we have a huge production center in Tralles, of course. Then Aphrodisias, maybe we have some production there. In Nazilli, we have I would say more or less a modern production center, like in 19th century and 20th century. Then lastly, we have Cnidus on the Cnidian Peninsula in Caria, in southern Caria. So these are the, I would say, internationally known workshops during the Roman period. Most of these places were published first by John Walker Hayes in his legendary volumes. Then there were some, of course, later studies on that, but especially in the recent years, German surveyors are doing lots of surveying in the region, especially in the region of Pitane, where some pottery results were just conducted. So I'm not going to share those results, but I will share the results of my PhD student. She's next to me. This is İclal Gülseren from Izmir. She has finalized her PhD thesis about the her pottery finds from Fokaya, from Old Fokaya, Eski Foça. And so we're gonna just now present our results. This is her PhD thesis, and I was the supervisor, and I helped her for that. And she's the one who created everything in the PhD. Actually, I'm just a speaker here, nothing more than this. Anyways, so let me just show you Fokaya. Maybe Maria has already been there to Fokaya. We have two Fokayas, Old Fokaya and New Fokaya, and this is the old one. Then we have Persian tomb and two more sites in the area. One of the most important problem about Fokaya is, where did they gather the clay for Fokaya? We believe that it should be somewhere close to Hermus, because we know that most of our large workshops during the Roman period, they were close to coast, but they were mostly localized right on the stream beds. We know it very well because they used especially the clay that they gathered from the rivers of the region. That's the reason why we have lots of mica inside of their clay, inside of their fabric. So we believe that the main source for their clay should be somewhere around Hermus, where Hermus is meeting with Aegean Sea, and we have 2 months here, actually, not only one. So in these both places could be a potential, I would say, source, a quarry for their clay, but they're not far away. This map that we have done together with İclal. İclal has worked so hard last summer during the summer period. She also excavated in Fokaya, but she also worked for this map under 45 degrees of hotness. It was a very, very hot summer. So these are the sites. The numbers are indicating where she has found or where she has collected pottery dumps or workshops. Sometimes both, because in Fokaya we have this both type of sites, either workshops or dumps or both of them. And as you see, there are several places like this because the production was so huge, so I would say industrialized, so that they used almost all the places in Fokaya during the Roman and early Byzantine periods. Let me show you. Yeah, tell me.
The presentation is not moving.
Are you still on the second slide?
How about now? How about now? No?
No, nothing. We only see the slide. If we can try the same thing again, stop sharing. Oh, okay, now we can see it.
Yes.
But
okay. So I'll proceed like this then. Can you see it now? Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Because I just want to say, especially about this. Well, this is the one that I talk actually. I talk about, as I said. Now I need to repeat them again. Sorry about this. I need to repeat it a bit. Well, this is what I'm talking about, like the Hermus and the river mounts, and yeah, as I said, like they gathered the clay from here, and that's why we believe that within the clay we have lots of inclusion, like micaceous inclusion and sand, and we have also lots of I would say different types of sea-related inclusions within the fabric because they were gathering the clay from the seasides. So this is the map that we have done together with Ijlal. She worked hard for this, as I said. The site of Fokaya is just a gulf, an internal gulf, where we have a nice peninsula here and a second peninsula. And the first peninsula is a peninsula for Athena temple, but it was reused during the Roman times for dumping their pottery wastes, their pottery trash. So they reuse this place. And we have also other places here, like ancient theater has been reused as a pottery dump. Then we have tumuli in the region, which were also reused as a pottery dump. So it's an amazing place where you can like discover lots of different things in terms of Roman pottery industry in the region. Lots of things have been protected perfectly, and they were being like sort of excavated systematically in the last 30 years. And my student, my Ijlal, here next to me, she worked only a small area of all these pottery finds. She worked namely in a small street, what they called it like promenade, or they call a small coastline street of Fokaya, where they have done a rescue excavation in 2002, many years ago, and she has gathered from there 800 pieces of shirts from a pottery discarding area. Here she has done some, systematic pointing of those find spots. Because she gathered this material from 30 different trenches in the area during the rescue excavations, but she has collected lots of information. So now I would like to share you the pottery information. First of all, the problem about the Phocaean red silverware was um, is that well-made production or multi-made? Because this is something that John Walker Hayes has assumed in his 1972 legendary volume, Late Roman Pottery, where he said he's not very sure about its multi-made or wheel-made character. But with her studies, we are now perfectly sure that in Fokaya we had wheels. They have, of course, used wheels in different forms, in different periods, in different features, and in different places. We know it very well. And because she has found in her trenches lots of plates that they used during the process of wheeling the pottery. Also, another problem about Fokaya red silverware was the typology. The typology that Hayes has done in his 1972 volume, as well as in his supplement volume, as well as in his handbook, and all his later publications of Athens, Athenian Agora, as well as Paphos and Royal Ontario Museum Catalogue. He has mostly worked with the Fokaya red silverware, which were found out of Turkey, out of Turkish sites, mostly from Athens or other places, far from remote places. Also, the other kind of pottery that we know, they were mostly excavated in places like Italy, Spain, Portugal, UK, even UK, some in France, some in the Black Sea area, and lots of them in Israel, Palestine region, as well as in the rest of Levant region, and also in Turkish coastlines like Cilicia, Lucia, then Black Sea a little bit, also other places in Western Asia Minor. So Hayes has already done a typological classification for this pottery, and he classified them into 10 10 groups. Here we have number 1, number 2, number 3. So we have used his typologies with our material, but we were able to recognize some more, I would say, not new types, because Hayes is always, as all we know very well, he's always extremely careful about his typologies and their datations. So we were not able to create new types. But what we have done to respect his work, to make some more subdivisions. So we have created some more subdivisions, but we were not very successful in this because the place that Ijlal has worked is a little place and did not really offer much new typologies. So, for instance, we came to the conclusion that number 3 is one of the most popular one, not only in Turkey but also in elsewhere. So it's, I think, the most popular form of Fokine red slipware. As you know, Fokine red slipware is mostly open vessels. Here we are seeing that very clear, and they produced in 3rd and 4th centuries in late antiquity, mostly open shapes, especially bowls and dishes, not plates. Plates is not very popular. Plates are not very popular for Fokaya, but they love dishes and they love bowls, of course. And their 3rd century bowl, this form, is extremely with truncated. Is that the right word in English? Truncated. The truncated form is very popular, especially in the Eastern Mediterranean, but also, as I said, in remote places like in Portugal, even in Barcelona. I have seen one piece in the exhibition. Well, we have, as I said, some plates like this one. And two more here, and dishes also. So one of our concentration was typology, of course, because we have lots of different, several similar shapes, but with lots of divisions. So we were careful about this. And our second concentration was, of course, stamps. So let me now show you our results about the stamps. Because this is something that Hayes did not really pay attention. So we wanted to conclude his results of 1972 with our own studies, of course. Okay, I would say this is Ijlal's, of course, drawings and Ijlal's conclusions, of course. The first typology that Ijlal created is Greek crosses with teardrop pendants. Hayes was talking about that a little bit, but he did not really differentiate about Greek cross, Latin cross, and other type of crosses. So we were able to at least say that. Then we have double-lined crosses, then again double-lined Greek crosses in a different shape. As a reference for cross typology, we try to find a basic source book, but unfortunately, in none of our study regions, like neither in Italy or in Greece or elsewhere, we did not find anything like enlightening the cross typologists. So this is a big pity actually for us, because Fokaya has a concentration, has a focus on cross depictions on the dishes especially. So this we have another one hooked open row formed Greek crosses. Then we have plain armed Greek crosses. Then crosses with open ends and teardrop pendants. I think we discussed with Ijlal that a lot. Why do they need this? Why did they need to put teardrops here? I think they mostly got those shapes from other media, not only pottery, but from some other media where engravings were important. So I think that the artisans of Fokine and red slipware in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th centuries were not basically or only ceramicists, but they were aware of other type of arts at that time, other type of depictions and motifs and ornamentations in their contemporary times. Then we have Greek cross with quadruple circle pendants, double-bordered and forked-ended Greek crosses, open-ended striped crosses. I hope that our English is perfectly good to express those crosses, because we worked hard on it, and I'm hoping that you understand what we mean with Greek crosses with very widened ends. As you see here, the ends are a little bit widened. It's like Greek cross in a Maltese shape. But we have also few, not many, monograms. Here we have a cricoform monogram. I tried to sort of find parallels for them. We have 3 or 4 altogether from seals, Byzantine seals, from contemporary Byzantine, so 5th, 4th century. No, Sorry?
1 minute left.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. 1 minute. Good to tell. Thank you very much for this. Well, I'll be very quick. Then we have lines. We're not very sure if this is line or not. We can discuss about that. Then we have birds, partridges, and cocks, like this one here. Not very, I would say, naturalistic, a little bit abstractive. Then we have hares, a pair of hares, like maybe running. Then peacocks, of course, it's early Christianity, and peacocks are normal. Then ducks, some ducks, and of course pisci, Latin pisci in English is fish, fishes, lots of fishes, and horses, of course, lots of lovely horses, not very naturalistic, a little bit abstractive, a little bit. Then we have deers, again, sometimes in pairs, but sometimes alone. Then we have eagles, aquila in Latin. Then we have venators. So these are the things that we have mostly in our stamp decoration. So for your proceedings, we would like to send you an article, an extensive article actually, with all our stamps. And I hope that everybody will use also in Serbia our results. So thank you very much for listening to us.
Thank you, Ergün. Is there any questions? Any comments? Lily Bonga, flat her hands. Me too. Yasna also. Amani, all right. Many congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
So, is there Leticia on the speaker? No. Yes. No.
If we can only stop sharing.
Yes, I just.
We are moving further then. Team from Argentina, welcome.
Yep.
There are familiar faces. Yes, hello.
Hello, how are you?
Very well, thank you. And
Many
you?
thanks for the time, because we have 5 hours in difference, so it's early morning in Argentina this time.
You're very welcome. We are exhausted. Here. Martina Perez, Martin Casanova Menendez, Leticia Gasparotti, Aika Vidal will speak on ceramic petrology or the invisible aspects in the definition of types. Please.
Just a second. So we were already working on the petrology, analyzing a very interesting assemblage, funerary assemblage, when we received the invitation for this
Excuse me.
conference.
Have you shared your presentation yet?
I'm trying to.
Okay.
And so we wanted to include a reflection. Here it is. Have to share it from my desktop. Some thoughts about what is typology and what aspects should be considered in order to create or define a typology for pottery. So we wanted to discuss this topic with you, and let me see if I can present it full screen. Right. There we go. Right, can you see it?
Yes, we can see. Please proceed.
Right, thank you very much. Right, so talking about typologies, many questions arise to our minds. For instance, do typologies reflect only decorative and morphological choices, or do they also incorporate technological practices? Because we have seen that in most cases, archaeological typologies have been built from visible aspects, but pottery is more than that. It's more than what's visible to the open eyes. So traditional typologies based on morphology and style mainly were used for many interesting questions, like the identification of regions, interactions, function, use, or relative chronology, for instance. We have seen many examples in these 2 days. But in many cases, technological aspects are not considered in the traditional classifications. So we propose to incorporate some other aspects, invisible aspects, for instance, petrographic analysis, to see some non-visible dimensions, for example, past composition, raw material selection, to understand technological decisions, or to establish correlations between the visible and invisible aspects, such as style, composition, and technological decisions. What are these? Excuse me?
Excuse me, are you still on your first slide?
No, I'm on the third
one. Because we only see the first slide. Can you exit the full screen?
Yep.
Can you now try going to a different slide, slide number 2 or something? Yes,
this?
unfortunately, we don't see it. Can we ask you to stop sharing your presentation and share it once again?
Right. Let me zoom in.
Just press the red button. It says stop sharing.
Yeah, the thing is that
or it would be in Spanish.
Cannot open full. Yeah, no, I cannot open. Don't worry about that.
Okay, but we can see. Wait. Can you come back to the present?
Oh, there it is. Yeah. Let me see if I can do it again. Or from a different screen, perhaps.
It's fine. We think the problem is that we think the problem is since you're using PowerPoint on. Okay.
Yeah.
Now we can see the second slide, but you're not full screen. If you can stay to just like this, don't enter the full screen mode. It would be. We think it will be the best.
That's okay. Right. Thank you. So we have discussed about what typologies include, right, and suggest the possibility of incorporating petrographic analysis to redefine typologies. We know that non-visible aspects reflect to many things, particularly to technological choices or porters' decisions in a specific social context. So, as porters are not mere recipients, but the result of a relationship between the material things like the geological conditions and social factors that affect abilities, skills, knowledge, functional needs, traditions, and power relations, all these aspects should be reflected in typology. And some of these choices concern non-visible aspects, such as the selection, manipulation, and use of raw materials, which can be studied with petrographic techniques to understand past composition, their relation with local geology and technological choices, but also more complex aspects such as interaction, networks, mobility, provenance, or social preferences. The thing is that these non-visible aspects are an indivisible part of any vessel, and they are related to social and economic activities. So they should be fundamental in any definition of a typology. To prove this, we are going to present a case study that we are studying in Antofagasta de la Sierra. That's a stylistically diverse pottery assemblage from an Inca burial place. That's called Casa Eladio Reales I, that's SER 1. They would allow us to test the traditional definition of typologies that we have previously done. So, Antofagasta de la Sierra is in the northern area of Argentina, here, just very near the border with Chile. It's in the Altiplano, that is the highlands. An arid region with irregular distribution of resources is a desert, a high desert, with wide temperature variations and concentration of nutrients in highland oases, right? So where the places where people and animal plants lived are these oases. It has a Cenozoic, sedimentary, and volcanic structure in geological terms, with the presence of igneous rocks from the collapse of one of the volcanoes. It's a volcanic area. The human occupations here are dated to at least 10,000 years and have been constant occupations until nowadays. It's shown in the presence of sites from different chronologies and uses such as domestic, productive, defensive, logistic, rock art stations, and symbolic places. So what about these? We are going to focus on one of these periods. That's the last period before the Spanish conquest of the area. That's the Inca expansion. The Incas' presence in Antofagasta de la Sierra. Antofagasta de la Sierra was incorporated in the southern province of the empire by the mid-15th century. The area was mainly, the Inca were mainly interested in the area because of the presence of mineral, plant, and animal resources. Remember that they have many oases and many mineral mines over there. And the strategic location, because it connects the highlands with the lower valleys. It's a connection point over there. When they entered the area, they modified economy, society, and culture with new rationales which reorganized the territory as well as local lifestyles. And in this process, they built new sites or remodeled the one that already existed and established the Capac Ñam, that's the Inca road system that connected all the points the empire was interested in. So as a consequence, new people, ideas, and objects move around the region and integrate local populations of many different points, such as Antofagasta de la Sierra, in the wider exchange networks and the new imperial administration. So what about this Ser 1 site? This place is found in the, excuse me, I skipped one, is found in the middle of the capital village of the area, right? It has an exceptional conservation and very limited chronology to the times we manage. It's located at the very center of the village in a hillside. It says funerary structure of 2 pits excavated in the rocks with walls covered by gray igneous tubular blocks. That's typical of Inca times. We could have some results in bioarchaeological analysis that show that in the burial there were 15 people, all of them young adults or sub-adults of both sexes. They were disarticulated and mixed. And there was a newborn in a ceramic urn, a local pottery ceramic urn. The grave goods included tupus, that's our typical female accessories, clothing accessories, loom-related wooden tools, bone projectile points, typically Inca. Pacific shells, remember that between Antofagasta de la Sierra and the Pacific, we have the Andes Mountains, ceramic vessels of both local and foreign styles. That's what we are going to concentrate on. So, applying a typical typological and stylistic classification of the pottery, we recovered the remains of 6 different styles. And these styles are connected with a diversity of regions where they originated. For instance, we have the Inca, that's a typical Cusco, from the typical Cusco area from Peru, but Inca Provincial, that was typical of the provinces, not of the capital. We have here, I'm going counterclockwise, right? Xavi Chicha pottery, that's from the southern Bolivian, northern Argentina area. We have Caspin-Chango, that's in the central valleys. Belén, that has a very wide origin in the Puna, that's in the Altiplano and in the valleys. Santa Maria, also in the valleys, and Chocabil. All these styles are from different traditions and have very specific shapes, and all typologies consider them according to their shapes and styles and decoration as well. So it shows the diversity of places and social groups that indicate the integration of Antofagasta de la Sierra into the Inca Empire. So this is the result we have applying morphological and formal typologies. But how can petrographic analysis contribute to the study of these typologies? What information could the technical decisions concerning the selection and manipulation of raw materials provide about this diversity? Because what's very important is that this was considered a marginal place, but as you can see, there is integration with many regions. So we say that we have 6 styles, 6 different groups to be considered, and applying a petrographic analysis, typical one with microscope, with the evaluation of the number of inclusions, the proportions of clay and cavities, and processing them both with software and statistical methods, we could get some results. That's what's interesting after all. And what are the results? We have 4 classifications of pasts that refer to different processing and manipulation of the materials. That's what we call receipts. The different proportions, the kind of materials included, and their types are called receipts. And these petrographic results were later compared to the styles, to the types that we have already established in previous works. Well, we found some interesting aspects. For instance, most sample pastes correlate with a specific style, that is, styles and composition match. For example, in Inca Provincial, in Chocabil. That's compatible with what we already have. But in some cases, the raw materials used do not match the typical ones. Some styles were expected to have a specific composition that's not followed in the materials we have in Cerulo. For example, Xavi Chicha, the one that comes from northern Bolivia, northern Argentina, southern Bolivia, if you remember. And there are other styles that presented 2 or more receipts that were not the same type, if we consider it in broader terms, in other kinds. For example, Santa Maria, Belén, or Caspin-Chango. Reaching this point, we ask ourselves if should previous typologies be revisited? And we revisited them, of course. So, a quick classification of these different groups according not only to morphological and stylistic aspects, but also to their petrology, show us that some of these pottery, as already published, were adopted by the Inca Empire in the case of Chocabil, were disseminated during the Inca Empire, like in the case of Caspin-Chango, were continuity from the forms and the receipts that were previously made in the different areas of northern Argentina, for example, Santa Maria, Belém, or we have a provincial production of typical Cusco places. It's shown in their forms, in their styles, but also in the compositions. But if we go further into the compositions, we can see the differences that we have in capital letters here in every one of these different styles, right? For example, we have pottery that's related to the imperial control of production, but others where regional variations are allowed. In other cases, the variations could be introduced by the Inca, Excuse me?
Excuse me, please,
Yeah.
1 minute, you have
Yeah.
left. Please.
Right, yeah. We're almost finishing. Thank you. So, what's the observation of typologies? That the visible aspects, morphology, color, design, iconography, should be matched with the non-visible aspects, like raw material selection, manipulation, or combination of the materials that allow us to make new typologies that are fundamental to reach a comprehensive understanding of the ceramic production and their implications. Because if we consider only the formal and decorative aspect, they can conceal important differences, like the ones we have seen that can be really representing different types of control that are seen in the compositional part of the pottery, but not in their external shapes or the other way, and can be only identified through non-visible aspects or variables seen like petrology, for instance. And they may reflect variations in materials, combination of technological choices, implying the control, allowance, or innovation of patterns, as well as circulation networks. Going back to our case study, what happens in this burial? The combination of these visible and non-visible aspects for the study of pottery facilitate a more thorough understanding of vessels beyond the typical typologies that existed in the era of form and style, and enlarge this concept of typology to include non-visible aspects. The petrographic diversity and combination of materials can form a meeting point for different vessels. This is the way they were found in the burial, manufactured with diverse raw materials, techniques, and recipes. They represent a variety of production strategies, not only production techniques, and circulation networks fostered by the Inca Empire, which include movement, we said, of vessels, people, and technical knowledge, not only one of these aspects. And the selection of vessels in these funerary grey goods as Ser Uno indicate the coexistence of technological choices, traditions, and portraits, which evidence the capacity of the Inca to mobilize people and objects and give them new meaning and expansion in consolidation of empire that is not limited to what is seen, but also to what is unseen in every vessel. Last of all, thank you to you all, and thank you to the people in Antofagasta de la Sierra and the different institutions that allowed us to present this work today. Many thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Aisha. Very important points in your presentation. Comments or questions, maybe? No, chat? No, nothing in chat? No. Thank you. We stay in Argentina. Aisha Vidal, Victoria Gutierrez will speak about building typologies out of ethnographic knowledge. Please share your presentation.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us. This is actually me and Aixa's work now, so she will stay here with us, but I will be talking in behalf of our group. So today we would like to present a reflection on archaeological typologies and how ethnographic information can help us think about other possible ways of classifying material culture. Specifically, we will be focusing on Chaco pottery traditions and on the relationship between archaeological classifications and ethnographic understanding of objects. So we have seen that a typology is one of the most common analytical tools in archaeology. It is a theory-driven system of classification used to organize archaeological materials. And it is done according to shared attributes. These attributes include form, style, technology, or function, or even invisible aspects like Aixa has just mentioned in the case of Antofagasta. And as Fernandez Martin proposes, typologies are not simply descriptive systems, They are analytical constructions intended to answer research questions. So they help us identify patterns and relationships within material culture. But at the same time, they are historically constructed, and they can move across very different cultural contexts. A good example that I believe has been previously mentioned today is the term arivalo. It is originally a Greek typological category, like we can see here in the top picture, referring to a ceramic vessel from the classical world. However, the same term was later applied to Inca vessels because archaeologists identified morphological similarities between both forms, as we can see down here. So in two very different meanings, contexts, and uses, the objects themselves being quite similar are given the same name. So we know that typologies are extremely useful, especially when we are analyzing complex archaeological data sets. They allow us to reduce said complexity, to compare assemblages, to identify temporal and spatial patterns, and to build broader interpretations about cultural variability. So typologies transform these isolated objects into evidence that we can actually interpret somehow. Our intention in this work is not to reject typologies, not at all. We know and we use them as fundamental analytical tools. But what we want to discuss is how different classificatory systems may emphasize different dimensions of material culture. The examples that we are going to use our case study come from the Gran Chaco region, which is still in Argentina, but in the northeast, particularly from Mocoit pottery traditions, although similar practices and similar pottery has been found among Huichí, Chorote, and Chulupi communities. These ceramic traditions were historically linked to mobility, to water management, to cooking and storage. But pottery production, we have found, also involved intergenerational transmissions of knowledge, technical practices, and symbolic dimensions. So before approaching these ceramics like we will as archaeological objects, we wanted to briefly reintroduce the people and communities who produced them. Here we constructed a very simple typology following classical archaeological criteria, as you can see. Vessels can be classified according to morphology, considering their shape, the neck, the base, the handles, the surface treatment, the firing atmosphere, or even the paste composition. And they can also be classified functionally. They are either cooking pots, storage jars, bottles, trays, and so on. And this is essentially the kind of classification done previously to these assemblages by Pallavecino during the mid-20th century. However, no however yet. The resulting type, after classifying all of this, is a bottle or botijo in Spanish. It is a globular vessel designed for liquid storage and transport with suspension handles and bone temper. And this works perfectly well as an archaeological classification. This type is defined through visible and measurable attributes, which are many times all that we really have when we are doing archaeology. However, we did have the opportunity to reach beyond that, and this is where our reflection begins, and where we came to realize that there is more than meets the eye. Typological classifications usually prioritize form, technology, and function. But ethnographic information, which is the information that we were lucky enough to have access to, suggests that other criteria may also be relevant when classifying pottery. For example, symbolic dimensions, the objects as carriers of meaning linked to beliefs, identity, and social practices that we cannot directly see just by looking at the objects themselves. The opportunistic aspects, the choices that are shaped by the environment itself, by the availability and the context. And of course, the ideological aspects, which are related to the external control of production, the power and its circulation in the context of the communities that produce these objects. And a very good example is related to a work that we have previously, something that we have previously analyzed with AIXA, which is colonial violence shaping pottery. A very good example of this is the term botijo that I have previously mentioned. It is originally a Spanish term referring to a very specific Iberian water vessel, Spanish on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. However, this term was applied to indigenous Chacot ceramics because they fulfilled a similar function. And it's very similar to what I have previously mentioned of the term aríbalo for Inca pottery. And in both situations, we can see how foreign typological categories were transferred onto objects belonging to entirely different cultural traditions. And what is more, eventually, indigenous potters were even pressured by Spanish to reproduce forms closer to the original colonial models that were called the original botijos, right? So we know that classifications are not only analytical tools, they have historical and ideological dimensions. And in the case of Chaco pottery, they literally shaped the objects eventually. So here is what we found. We know that from an archaeological perspective, bone temper is generally interpreted functionally. It improves drying, it reduces cracking, we know it, we've studied it. So vessels containing bone temper would normally belong to the same technological category. However, the ethnographic information introduces another layer of meaning. According to local knowledge, according to the information that the potters were able to give us, the wide vessels should contain cow bone, so they are correctly shaped, while the taller vessels should contain horse bone. So the selection of the animal that whose bone will be used as bone temper is not only technological, it's not technological at all, apart from the fact that you need bone temper. It's linked to the morphology and identity of the vessel itself. And we can clearly see how in this case, temper is not only functional, it is encoding meaning, which is very clear for these communities. Another great example is the multiple spouted vessel. From a purely archaeological perspective, we can even say that it's dysfunctional because it's very hard to pour water from one of the necks without pouring from the next. But that is from a practical point of view, it's very hard. But ethnographic interpretations associate these vessels with assemblies involving different social groups. So the idea is that each spout represents one participating group of the meetings of different groups. So what appears morphologically impractical and even hard to explain may actually materialize social relations and collective decision-making for these people. And here is my personal favorite, the three-legged cooking pot. It could be easily classified as a stable cooking pot, and that classification would not necessarily be wrong. It is what we can see. But ethnographic information has showed us that pottery production may also be regulated by bodily and cosmological rules. And I want to share 1 minute long video. Let me share the sound. Where a person from the community is telling us the story of the three-legged cooking pot.
Bueno, esta ollita tiene su historia. Esta ollita, antes, mis abuelos, él le contaba abuelo, que una señora, una chica, cuando estaba enferma la chica, antes no era como ahora. Ahora las chicas cuando se enferman salen en camino, cualquier lado salen. Viste que esta ollita, la historia de nosotros, porque viste que cuando una chica salió de afuera y ahí agarró esa, cuando se creció la uña y ella comía a toda la gente así. Ajá. Viste que cuando el viejito cuando soñaba y esta olla le cargaba la ceniza. Y bueno, el cacique Pioná, él estaba diciendo que voy a salvar esa olla, entonces él llevó, cuando está cerca la chica, y él le tiraba la ceniza, le tiraba. Entonces mientras que él estaba peleando con la ceniza, porque se nos ve la chica, cuando nos ve la chica y él se fue corriendo con los chivitos. Y bueno, cuando está cerca el chivito y gritaba al chivito y le tira otra vez la ceniza. Entonces ese parece que le vendieron. Cuando el último, cuando dijo hasta ahí nomás, cuando el sueño de él, hasta ahí nomás. Entonces, cuando está cerca la chica y le tapó la cabeza con toda la ceniza y ahí murió la chica.
Gracias.
So this is a very, very clear example to me
Bueno,
of how pottery can also be related to restrictions related to menstruation and even postpartum periods, as we know from other stories, that restrict participation in social activities and in certain periods of stages of ceramic production. So technical production cannot always be separated from the broader understandings of the body and the material world and how the communities that produce these vessels perceive those aspects. And the final example that we brought here are the masks. So they offer an interesting example because archaeologically, if we found one of these, they might be interpreted as ritual, symbolic, or ethnic identity markers very clearly. But many contemporary masks that are done nowadays in the Barrio Toa, for example, in Resistencia, are actually produced for tourist or commercial contexts. And in some cases, we can even see that certain ethnic traits are exaggerated because they are meant for external audiences. So the same object may simultaneously function as an ethnic marker, a commercial product, and an intercultural mediator between the locals and the tourists. This demonstrates one more time that objects may operate within multiple systems of meaning and that classic typological classifications are only one of those systems of meaning. So to sum up, as we mentioned before, archaeological typologies are extremely valuable analytical tools. They allow us to organize, compare, and interpret material culture. But typologies are built from observable attributes and from the questions archaeologists choose to ask. So different classificatory systems may emphasize different aspects of the very, very same object, like we have just seen with the masks. Ethnographic perspectives suggest that objects may encode meanings invisible through morphology, decoration, or technology alone, and that the materials may also be socially and symbolically classified. And the technical decisions may reflect memory, identity, cosmology, and social relations. So material culture is not only technological, it is also relational and historical. So as a closing final reflection, typology does help us organize material culture, but ethnography helps us understand the worlds that produced it. many thanks for having us, to the organizers, and of course to the communities for allowing us to show the video. That was Patricia, by the way, in the video, and all the museums that help us carry on with our work analyzing Chaco pottery.
Thank you. Great presentation. Any comments?
There are some comments. Nadia Kotova said that that's very interesting and graphic data, and I agree completely. I really enjoyed this presentation. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you for having us and giving us the opportunity to share this. I think it's unique, really, the kind of ethnography that we have here. I really appreciate being able to show it to you.
Thank you.
You're really welcome. So, one presentation left, Sambo Evente, Zsofia Másik, metric comparison of hand-formed ceramic vessels from the Gepidic and early hour periods, 6th to 7th century. Please, colleagues.
Hi everyone. Can you hear me and see the slides?
Yes, we can see.
Can you hear me as well? Just as a control check.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Great. So I will be beginning the presentation. Thank you for having us and for all of you who stayed until the last presentation. So hand-formed pottery represents one of the most sensitive indicators of cultural and technological change in the 5th to 7th centuries AD, reflecting local production traditions, everyday practices, and shifting economic structures. Research has increasingly emphasized that hand-formed pottery assemblages were not marginal or purely archaic survivals, but dynamic components of broader regional transformations affecting Central and Eastern Europe during the migration period and the early Middle Ages. At the same time, hand-formed pottery may provide an important connecting link between the Gepidic period and the so-called early Avar and early Slavic horizons, particularly through the continuity of certain morphological and technological traits. Despite its significance, this transitional ceramic tradition has so far received relatively limited systematic typological and metric analysis in our region. The Gepidic period material presented here was originally processed by me within the framework of my doctoral dissertation. Levente concluded the further analysis of the finds from the perspective of metric analysis and typology and presents materials also from the early Avar period. In the Great Hungarian Plain, the Sarmatian period settlement network was succeeded by Gepidic period habitation. The new settlements of the Gepidic kingdom in the Tisza region and Transylvania possess a distinctive material culture. It is widely accepted today that Gepidic pottery developed within the Carpathian Basin during the 5th century. This independent tradition emerged from regional Sarmatian and Pannonian roots, the traditions of the Han period cultural complex, and Western early Merovingian influences. We assume that Gepidic style traditions may have continued to a lesser extent into the late 6th century, effectively integrating into the multicultural heritage of the early Avar period. This continuity between Gepidic and Avar material culture significantly adds to the complexity of our research. Let's start with the material in question. These pots from a Middle Tisza region site, Rákóczifalva, exhibits the following features. The most common form has a retracted short rim and a relatively slender body. The pots are quite small. The fabric is compact and primarily tempered with pebbles. These pots have undergone reduced firing and are generally brownish or black in color. The proportion of hand-formed pottery is relatively significant, consisting almost exclusively of pots. Based on fragments, their proportion is 12% in the material. In Sarmatian period research, statistics based on the percentage of rim fragments are sometimes used for verification of technological groups. Using this method, the proportion of hand-formed pottery reaches almost 20%. The site material consists mostly of wheel-turned pottery. The find varies characterized by burnished pottery of the 5th century tradition, and new Merovingian period types with stamped decorations. The most widespread type is household pottery with granular tempering, consisting also mainly of pots. As you can see on these slides, hand-formed material forms a small but integral part of this Germanic period ceramic spectrum. Zooming out to the site-level analysis, here you can see the main data for this site. The chronology was built upon analogies in grave goods and a complex relative chronological investigation of the site. This hand-formed material is unambiguously contemporary with the Gepidic kingdom, appearing from the last third of the 5th century until the middle third of the 6th century. C14 dating of settlement features is currently in progress. So far, only a few absolute dates from human osteological material are available. These confirm that the Germanic cultural milieu corresponds with previous absolute dating. Sadly, these Gepidic period graves at the site did not contain any ceramic vessels. This pottery represents a completely new tradition in the Tisa region. I have analyzed the Sarmatian period hand-formed pottery from the same site using the same categories for descriptive statistics. As you can see, Sarmatian pottery is almost exclusively tempered with crushed potsherds or grog. Firing resulted in an oxidized reddish surface. The fabric is loose and poorly fired. Sarmatian hand-formed vessels show more significant variance in size and capacity. So overall, every aspect of this pottery changes between the Sarmatian and Gepidic material: tempering, firing, shape, size range, and capacity. These changes complement the profound transformations that also occur in Wiltron pottery between the two periods. My conclusion was that this entirely new tradition is likely associated with new population groups. This result was reinforced by genetic data showing population change and the discontinuity of the Sarmatian period population, but these genetic results are in print. On this map, Gepidic period sites are shown where similar vessels have been found. This tradition is most characteristic of the northern Hungarian plain. In the southern Tisa region, handmade pottery is mostly absent from Gepidic settlements. Based on current research, we cannot definitively identify this material in the southern territories of the Gepidic kingdom, I mean the lower Tisa, the Banat region, or Pannonia Sirmiensis. But unlike the theme we are now addressing, hand-formed pottery of the Lombard territories of the Pannonian regions evoked more significant debate in the 20th century international research. Pots appearing in Lombard graves were often linked to the migration of Slavic populations. This view was later denied by István Bona, subsequent Hungarian research, and scholars like Florin Kurta. According to Bona, the precursors for these Lombard vessels were widely distributed in the Swabian and Roman period Alba-Germanic cultures. Collecting Lombard cemetery and settlement material, I concluded that Bona's Alba-Germanic group must be further subdivided. Part of the material, these Swabian type bowls or pots on this slide, can indeed be integrated into the Alba-Germanic series. However, the other group, characterized by a more slender body, no clear precursors have been identified for it. Therefore, the analysis of Lombard material does not resolve our questions regarding the origin. My summary for the first part: a new type of hand-formed pottery tradition appears in the Gepidic period northern Hungarian plain, the precursors of which are unknown in the region. Its origin may shed new light on the provenance of local communities. The context is clearly Germanic and pre-Avar in character, with no other signs of Slavic presence in the settlements or in the inhumation burials of Germanic character in the so-called Reihengräberfelder. Further research must focus on settlement materials that are difficult to date and are complicated by the questions of Slavic ethnogenesis. Targeted systematic research is needed for comparisons with previously analyzed Slavic assemblages. Since Slavic archaeology is highly advanced in metric studies, it was logical to examine our material through this lens and compare it with widely accepted typochronologies of Slavic pottery analysis. And now, Levente, please continue.
Thank you. In the 1940s, Ivan Borkowski described and defined the hand-formed pottery assemblage dated to the 6th-7th centuries from the territory of Prague, from which one of the most characteristic ceramic type derives its name. This form is characterized by a relatively narrow base and a gradually widening body that reaches its maximum diameter in the upper third of the vessel, combined with a relatively simple rim design. Today, however, it is clear that the ceramics of the 6th-7th centuries were far more diverse, displaying a wide range of morphological variations. In recent decades, considerable effort has been devoted to establishing a reliable typology for hand-formed pottery assemblages. The most comprehensive system was developed by Gabriel Fusek, building on the earlier work of Irina Rusanova and Helena Zola-Damikova. More recently, Czech researchers have further developed this approach by applying three-dimensional analysis to reconstructable vessels, expanding Fusek's metric typology through digital morphometric methods. In the present study, however, the traditional two-dimensional metric typology is applied, as it currently remains the most practical and widely applicable method. Importantly, it can also be used for fragmentary vessels that cannot be reconstructed in their complete form. The method is based on recording metric data from precisely defined points along the outer profile of the vessel, measured relative to the S and S1 axes. These measurements are entered into a database where the corresponding indices are calculated automatically. Each index describes a specific morphological characteristic of the vessel. Since this system has been applied across a wide geographical area stretching from present-day Ukraine to the Czech Republic, it provides a standardized and quantitatively based framework for comparing ceramic assemblages from distant regions. At the same time, it also allows for a more objective comparison between individual archaeological sites and local assemblages. The use of the same typological categories across geographically distant assemblages greatly facilitates comparison between different archaeological materials. If only the upper part of the vessel is reconstructable, the system still allows a typological classification based on measurable features of the preserved profile. A basic requirement is that the fragment preserves at least the section reaching the vessel's maximum body diameter. The most important parameters are the angle of rim eversion, marked with D, the relative rim height E1, and the strength of profiling E2, which together determine the typological code. An example of such a typological code can be seen in the lower right corner, 3, 1, 2. In this case, the first digit 3 refers to the degree of rim eversion, the second digit 1 to the relative rim height, and the third digit 2 to the strength of profiling. Together, these values describe a moderately everted rim with a relatively low rim height and moderate profile articulation. Increasing D values indicate progressively more open and outward bent rim forms. The analyzed assemblage is dominated by types 211, 212, and especially 312, which correspond to vessels with vertical to moderately everted rims. Strongly everted and highly open forms occur only sporadically, suggesting that conservative rim morphologies remain dominant within the assemblage. At the same time, the presence of several more profiled and more open vessel types indicates increasing formal variability and morphological development. Overall, the material fits well into the formal spectrum defined by Fusek's typological system and reflects a technologically and morphologically transitional ceramic tradition. The comparison shows that the vessel types most common in the Gepedic period assemblage, especially 211, 212, 321, and 412, also occur with relatively high frequency in the early Slavic period material. This suggests that similar morphological preferences characterized both assemblages, particularly the dominance of vertical to moderately everted rim forms. Although the chronological and regional contexts are not identical, the parallels indicate a broader continuity of handmade ceramic traditions across the 6th-7th centuries CE. The scatter plot demonstrates that the Gepedic period vessels cluster within a relatively narrow E1 range, indicating fairly consistent rim height proportions across the assemblage. By contrast, the wider spread of E2 values reflects greater variability in vessel profiling and rim articulation. A similar concentration pattern can also be observed in the Slovakian early Slavic period, suggesting comparable morphological tendencies in both assemblages. Overall, the comparison indicates that while rim proportions remained relatively standardized, vessel profiles themselves display increasing formal diversity. Most vessels fall into the low and medium D ranges, which means that vertical and only slightly everted rim forms dominate within the assemblage. The scatter plot suggests that vessels with similar rim eversion values, D, may still differ considerably in the profiling of their upper parts, E2. Only a few vessels belong to the strongly everted categories, 512, 523, indicating that highly open rim forms were relatively rare in this material. From a typochronological perspective, the assemblage is dominated by cylindrical to moderately everted rim forms, while highly everted forms occur only sporadically. At the same time, the broad distribution of E2 values indicates considerable variability in profile articulation, including several strongly profiled forms. According to the metric typology system, these traits correspond to a more developed morphologically diverse horizon rather than an early homogeneous phase. The coexistence of relatively vertical rims with more profiled and curved forms suggests the simultaneous presence of conservative and more developed morphological tendencies. The 28 metrically analyzable handmade vessels from the settlement at Rákóczi-falva show close similarities to the later handmade ceramic horizons known from the early Avar and early Slavic periods, both in terms of dominant formal types and rim index ranges. Although the sample remains limited, the frequency distribution of the vessel types appears broadly comparable. The question, however, is how these observations should be interpreted within a purely Gepidic period context, where fine wheel-thrown ceramic assemblages are generally regarded as the dominant and characteristic component of material culture, as Zsófia showed it. The presence of handmade vessels displaying formal traits comparable to later early Avar period and early Slavic period assemblages suggests that these morphological tendencies may have emerged earlier and within a broader cultural and technological framework than previously assumed. Most likely, this phenomenon reflects a large-scale transformation in ceramic production observable across much of Central and Eastern Europe during the 5th, 7th centuries. During this process, more centralized and standardized production traditions, represented primarily by fine wheel-thrown pottery, were gradually replaced, supplemented, or paralleled by smaller-scale local production systems. As a result, handmade pottery traditions appear to have gained increasing importance, while simultaneously exhibiting considerable formal diversification and regional adaptation. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Very clear presentation on very important topic.
Thank you.
Have we any comments or questions? No, everything was clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
So it was the last presentation of our this year conference. According to the program, we should have a coffee break and final remarks, concluding remarks, but considering that some colleagues have already left, we propose to skip the break. And therefore we'll have a short closing remarks. To sum up, we heard 28 presentations. We had 50 participants from 14 countries, 3 continents. And the presentation.
Asia. Forgot Asia.
Yes, of course.
Excuse me, 4. And presentations highly exceeded our expectations. And thank you all for that. We heard so many interesting methodological approaches, so many interesting and important ceramic assemblages have opportunity to see, and we look forward to our next publication. Yes.
Yes, I have to say something.
Yes,
now.
please.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm really overwhelmed. These 2 days were so nice, and we heard many interesting and very inspiring. Sorry?
It's on.
Yes,
It's this one.
Thank you. And we heard many interesting presentations regarding typology, and we have heard about some new methods, about different approaches to morphometric analysis, computer applications, and we also heard what are the challenges to typology with this wonderful ethnographic observation that we heard 20 minutes ago, which really enrich our knowledge about pottery. And so we are very grateful for you all. We hope that you really enjoyed as much as we did. And of course, we will get back to you very soon with instructions for publication of this conference. So thank you very much. Does anyone has any comment or suggestion? Now is the time. If not, I would like to thank again to all of you, and hopefully we'll see you next at the next meeting of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for organizing and everybody.
Yes.